Now we're going to have coming is Ms. Kay Manning, who is going to be the facilitator for this first half of the candidate forum. Ms. Manning.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening. I am Kay Manning, and I am your moderator for the first half of this forum tonight. I'm a member of the Black Women's Roundtable and the NAACP, but tonight, of course, I'm functioning as a BWR member. The BWR is an organization established to bring together women with diverse views and interests within the community to discuss problems and issues that affect them in their daily lives. We will begin by having each candidate introduce themselves. We will start on the far end. I think Mr. Ryan Besicio is not here. Is that correct?
Yeah, football.
Okay. Who is the first person?
Martha Long.
Okay.
Good evening. What a great looking group. And thank the NAACP for hosting this. I am Martha Long. I am the hometown girl. I grew up in Titusville, graduated from Titusville High School. I went on to Rollins, and later in life I got a master's degree from the University of Southern California. I worked in aerospace all of my adult life, retiring in 2001. When I left here in 1980, I left my children and my parents. My children were grown, and both my parents. Well, when I came home, I'd lost a parent, but I had grandchildren. So I came home to be with my grandchildren. And I got involved in city business because I've been political all my life. I always stayed tuned in to the political scene and what was going on. I thought it was a thing I needed to do as an American citizen. So I did. When I came home, my mother was watching city council. And I'd go to visit her, and all she wanted to talk about was what went on at city council meeting. So I found I had to go watch city council so I could have a conversation on the subject she wanted to talk about. So one thing led to another. I got involved. I became an activist, and I got educated on how city government works, and I started routinely attending city council. Time passed, and I ran. First time I ran, I was not successful in winning, but I came within 500 votes of beating an incumbent. Last time, 4 years ago, I did run, and I did win. And I am running again for re-election, and I appreciate your vote, and thank you very much for your time.
Good evening. Greetings to the NAACP and all the members that are here tonight. Thank you for hosting the event, bringing all the candidates, and actually putting everybody together here tonight so they have an opportunity to hear what we may have to offer. My name is Matthew Barringer. I'm running for Titusville City Council, seat number 2. A little bit about myself. I spent my time after school going directly into the service. In the service, I served as an airborne ranger in the United States Army. Unfortunately, or fortunately, I had the privilege to serve, but was injured in an airborne jump into Kosovo. Spent some time at Walter Reed, got put back together, and exited the service. After the service, I moved to Italy to open a business. Didn't work out. Turns out you have to have some planning that goes on with that. So lesson learned on that. Moved to New York, and then from New York, moved to Titusville. My family had moved to Titusville during the aerospace. I grew up with my parents working in aerospace constantly for their entire careers. And I found myself here after 7 years in the military, or 6.5 years, 7 years in the military. I found myself here as an airborne ranger with not much employment opportunity. I went to work for Carrabba's about my third day here. Worked for about 7 years with them. Had my opportunity to have my own restaurant in Staten Island. In that process, I ran restaurants that were between $4 to $5 million a year, which constitutes the top 3% worldwide of revenue. It's a lot of chicken to get about $4 to $5 million. After that, Unfortunately, my mom fell ill. I moved back to Titusville after years in the service, years as a proprietor of a restaurant. Came back, and the best job I could find was at Denny's, working the night shift after 3 interviews. I decided that wasn't my course in life, and so I became engaged, became active, found opportunities throughout the community to serve, and that's why so many faces here are familiar with my service to the community. So thank you all for coming tonight.
Good evening. I'm Kurt Jacobus, and I thank you very much for allowing us to speak. I'm running for County Court Judge, Group 5. Luckily, there's only one judicial race. It's Stephen Coons and myself. Now, I'm running because I believe in our judicial system. I believe in the Constitution. And the only way to make the government system work is for citizens to respect it and believe in it as well. That's what I strive to do. Now, born and raised here in Brevard County. My family's been here for about 70 years. I married the girl next door. My wife Katie and I were next door neighbors growing up. We got married, had 2 children. We're actually 1 child, 1 on the way. And that's why she couldn't be here. She's on bed rest. And a week after the election, she's due. So the rest is a little haywire right now. But my background started as a Brevard County deputy sheriff here in Brevard County. Worked from MEMS to MICO, and I moved up to a SWAT team. And I think it's very important for a judicial candidate to be well-rounded, have that street smarts, be able to work as a law enforcement officer. As an attorney, I started out as a 2-man firm with Krasny Detmer, then moved to open my own practice, was a solo practitioner, ran my own small business, and I merged with Gray Robinson, which is a big firm. Been there for about 5 or 6 years. I've handled multi-million-dollar commercial litigation cases down to small business owners, filing suit and small claims, to guardianships for elder law and estate planning. I do both transactional and litigation. Where else could I go? I'm supported by Brevard lawyers, supported by Brevard law enforcement, Sammy Cacciatore, Cam Gatto, and a bunch of other pillars of our community. Thank you very much.
My name is Charlie Sitton. I'm a Democrat candidate for Brevard County Property Appraiser. A little information about me. I grew up here in Titusville. My family moved here in 1967 when my dad got a job at the Space Center. I stayed here until my junior year of high school. Moved back up to Kentucky with my family. I attended Berea College in Berea, Kentucky. Graduated from there with a BA degree in 1984. I then went to the University of Tennessee and attended graduate school. In 1986, we moved back to Brevard County. At that time, I started in the property appraiser's office as a field evaluator trainee. Worked for the property appraiser's office for over 21 years. At the time I left, I was an assistant director of field operations. I had earned the designation of accredited senior appraiser, certified Florida evaluator. I've held the license as a trainee appraiser. I'm also a licensed claims adjuster. As your property appraiser, what I'd really like to do are 3 things. 1, I'd like to modernize the office. I'd like to streamline the organization. I want to provide a fair and accurate tax roll. I want to provide you customer service that's second to none. I've been this last week. I've been honored and humbled with the endorsement of the current property appraiser for my leadership skills and my management experience. And that's an honor I take very seriously, considering he's a Republican and I'm a Democrat. He's come across party lines to support me. I look for your support. I need your support. Look for your vote on November 6th. Thank you.
My name is Phil Archer, and Martha, she's the hometown girl, I'm the hometown boy. I've been here since 1960. My father was a teacher and a principal. Some of you all may have known him from that, and some of you may have kids that went there or may have gone yourself. This is my home. I love Titusville. I'm so glad to see the forum here tonight. And that's where I'm raising my family now. My lovely wife, Stephanie, is a principal here, so we're continuing the education theme in our household. And we have one child at Titusville High and one at Astronaut, so we're kind of playing both sides there. A good politician, covering all bases. I've been with the office for 28 years. I came right out of law school, came back here, so basically I've lived here all my life. I've worked in every division within the office. I'm very proud of a program we started in 1999 called the Neighborhood State Attorney Initiative. And that was the first of its kind in Florida. And basically, we were allowed, as a creator of the program, I could set up a neighborhood office anywhere in Brevard County, and I chose Titusville because I thought that was where my connections are. That's where my relationships are. And so we started a neighborhood office. In fact, Terry Goodwin's one of our neighborhood advocates that has been with me for many, many years. Sherilyn Blake Jenkins up here is one of my advocates down in Palm Bay, Melbourne. She helped us out there in the community. Her brother, Mayor Blake, but I want to say Sherilyn's a much better half. But it's because of that program that we were able to build a lot of relationships and a lot of partnerships. And basically it was problem solving. Working with Suzanne at the Social Services Center. Suzanne, when you had a legal issue or a problem, who are you going to call? Yeah. So that's why I'm here, and that's why I want your support. I want to continue those kind of community partnership building, those relationships, so we can solve problems and make Titusville even a greater place to live. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Tom Goodson. I'm presently some of yours House Representative, House District 29, which serves Titusville to St. Lucie County line. Prior to that, I was on the Canaveral Port Authority Board 8 years. Each election that I've been in, which is two, one on the Port Authority and one for the State House, Titusville helped me. So I'm here tonight to ask you for your support again. Now, as a legislator, I'll be the first one to tell you the state has many problems. Everything from education, overcrowdedness, no jobs, highly permitting fees and stuff like that. I'm a businessman. I started my business in Titusville in 1988. I'm a native. My wife is a 38-year educator. We have 2 children. I bought Larkin Coal on Silver Star Road. I'm an asphalt road contractor. But going to the state, you had 10 of the best years of your life in Florida prior to the meltdown. State had all kind of money. Didn't save a penny. So I was elected at the worst time possible. There was no, well, that's true. They're not like us who save money. Elected at the worst time possible. Everything had to be cut. Very tough decisions. Very tough decisions. Now, is it getting better? Yes, the economy is. Is it going to go back to where it was? I can't predict the future. But I will tell you this. If you support me, you elect me, I will represent all the people, just like I've done in 29. My name is Tom Goodson. I'm looking for your support. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening. My name is Sean Ashby. I'm also running for the Florida House District 50. District 50 is a district that is one of the new ones. That is East Orange County in North Brevard. I'm a teacher. I've been teaching for 11 years. I have an absolutely wonderful job at Timber Creek High School teaching economics, government, and law studies. I decided to run because we've got many problems coming down from Tallahassee. You guys had a presentation earlier tonight that the county is asking you to raise your sales tax to help fund education. Well, one of the reasons, and I'm going to tell you right now, Brevard is not the only one. Seminole County is in the same boat. They're being asked to pay the 1 cent sales tax as well. And they had problems last year because they had to close schools. And there was huge problems. And parent groups stood up and said, why is this happening? Well, I can tell you why this has happened. Because your taxpayer money that's going into Tallahassee, many of that is not going towards public education. We've had a huge cut in public education over the last couple of years. While at the same time, much of your taxpayer money, tens of millions of your taxpayer money, have gone to companies with the promise of creating jobs. Most of those jobs were not created. I'm standing here before you tonight telling you that if you elect me to go to Tallahassee, number one, we're going to protect your taxpayer money. We're going to ensure that our future and our future in education is paid for, and we take care of these students. Because as we all know, education is key to creating a society for the future.
Amen.
My name is Sean Ashby, and I'm running for the Florida House.
Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Richard Gilmore, and I'm running for U.S. House of Representatives, the new District 8. I want to thank the NAACP and the Community Center here, and I want to especially thank all of you folks for showing up and getting involved in a representative democracy, because that's what we have. We have a representative democracy because you don't have to go to Washington and vote. Every time they have something that they want to vote on, if we had a true democracy, you'd have to get on the plane and go up to Washington and vote. So we have a representational democracy. I'm running as an independent because I believe that we need an independent voice up in Washington. One that is not owe allegiance to either a party, a political party, or a political action committee. My opponent, the incumbent, has raised and taken hundreds of thousands of dollars from corporation PACs. With me, you get a grassroots campaign, a candidate who has no strings attached. Now, I'm running also with a pledge that I'll only serve for 2 terms. So a vote for Gilmore is a vote for term limits as well. As the 2-term mayor, Sebastian, I'm proud of our record. I'm proud of what we've been able to accomplish because in the last 4 years, if you saw Sebastian 4 years ago, it looked a lot like Cocoa, it looked a lot like Titusville. We had lots of empty storefronts. We had folks that were leaving town, folding up their businesses. You know, it doesn't look like that anymore. We have people moving into town, things have turned around, and we have, I'm proud of our record. Working across the aisle, I work with Republicans and Democrats. And I know that good ideas come from both sides of the aisle. So that's what I'm looking to take up to Washington, is that type of work, and I would ask for your vote this November. Thank you.
I'm Shannon Roberts, and I'm your Democratic nominee for Congressional District 8. And as Richard says, it's all of Brevard, all of Indian River, and East Orange, which is Bithlo and Christmas. For many of you here, I know that's particularly dear as you go over to Orlando. But I want to thank the NAACP for this wonderful opportunity to be with you, and also thank you very much for being here to hear the choices that you have. As you know, right now in this nation, we have a critical crossroads. We're either going to go forwards or we're going to go backwards. And if we go forwards, we're going to the positive possibilities for the future, and if we go backwards, we're going to the failed policies of the Bush administration. So it's very critical right now that we make our serious contemplations on what we're going to do November the 6th. I'm Shannon Roberts, as I mentioned, and I'm a federal executive, having worked with the U.S. Departments of Justice, Transportation, NASA headquarters here at Kennedy Space Center. I was also executive director of the President's Council on Management Improvement, which is an interagency group of 23 federal departments and agencies across the federal government. Most of my experience has been with large-scale change, working across the aisle with different administrations and supporting the agenda for the nation. I also served for 4 years as a city council member here in Cape Canaveral. So I have an extensive background at the federal, state, and local levels, and also I worked with the private sector with Xerox Corporation when I was the President's Exchange Executive. As I mentioned earlier, we're either going to bring new jobs here, keep our spaceport #1 in the world, we're going to protect our environment, we're going to support clean energy alternatives, we're going to improve our infrastructure, we're going to protect Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, we're going to provide health care for all, we're going to protect women's right to choose, our privacy rights, also equal pay. So again, I ask your support, Shannon Roberts, for new Congressional District 8. Thank you so much.
I'm going to be different and use the microphone. Good evening. My name is David Jackson, and I'm here today as a volunteer for the Bill Posey campaign. Unfortunately, Congressman Posey is unable to attend tonight personally, as he had committed weeks ago to another candidate forum this evening. Congressman Posey asked that I read the following statement. Thank you to the NAACP and the Gibson Community Center for making this forum possible. This is where I was raised, schooled, worked, married, and chose to raise my family. Voters elected me because I gained their respect the old-fashioned way. I earned it. I've coached or sponsored over 100 youth teams and leagues, spent years on school advisory boards, was president of a civic association and Kiwanis Club, a youth leader in our church, and an active member of our Civilian Military Relations Council. I've made transparency and accountability top priorities. A Washington newspaper nicknamed me Mr. Accountability. When Congress got raises, leading by example, I refused mine every year and co-sponsored legislation to block such future raises. I cut my office budget and returned over $500,000 of your hard-earned money back to the Treasury. A balanced budget is the only way to save America from a mountain of debt, and we know every agency can cut a little. I pushed to create the 3-day period of public availability so everyone can read legislation before Congress votes on it. I've worked hard to be an independent voice for common sense. I've stood up to both Democrat and Republican Party leaders when they were wrong, and I've reached across the aisle to partner with Democrats on common sense solutions, like maintaining America's leadership in space and curbing overregulation to create jobs. I worked to secure the funding for the Harry T. and Harriet Moore Homestead in Mims to the tune of $750,000, secured funding in the amount of $250,000 for the Moore Recreation Complex in Fellsmere, and sponsored legislation, H.R. 2338, in Congress last year and again this year to rename the Cocoa Post Office after the Moores. Please continue helping to reform Washington by voting for Bill Posey.
We'd like to thank the candidates for those inspiring words from each of them to tell us about them. We now have some questions. First question is, this is a general question. We have heard pension obligations could bankrupt the city in the near future. Do you think pension reform is needed now? Anyone can take this question.
I am assuming that the question is pointed toward the city of Titusville. And yes, as in the case of many cities across the country, pension reform isn't a choice. We have to. The city council is currently working very hard to make that happen, and I am very confident that we will be successful. It's not going to be an easy thing. It's going to be painful. But it is something that has to be done. And hopefully the outcome will be that in years to come, as things improve, we can reinstitute some of the things that have to be cut now.
Okay, this is a general question.
Would you want me to take the second half of that question?
Yes. Excuse me?
Would you like me to take the second half of that question?
Do you think pension reform is needed now?
I'm happy to take it. Thank you. When we discuss pension reform and the contributions that we've asked our fire, police, and city employees for years, I haven't met a fireman or a law enforcement or an employee who hasn't said, we're okay to the idea of changes, contributions, adjusting. We know that the city's in a hard time. But there's a few things to remember. It's a matter of being responsible while we're seeking those reforms. So as a responsible way to meet those needs, number one, when we look at, I think I equate it to Social Security. If we went to somebody who was ready to retire this year or next year and asked them to say, I'm sorry, you're only going to get half of what you were going to get before, or propose something, that is an extreme plan. And so those obligations that we said that we would make to those individuals who are ready to retire, we need to meet those. It's the same principle we looked at for soldiers coming back from World War I, and God knows we know how that worked out. The other part is that we can look at some of the obligations. Our city employees have been contributing to their pensions for a long time. This isn't a new process for them. So as we go and we look for how we can help with this, one of the challenges we have is that there are offers on the table. The city employees understand it, but doing it in a responsible way is imperative. Because what I can tell you is that in the past 4 to 5 years, our city employees haven't had a raise. So that city employee who comes in with a degree, who could be working at a $60,000, $70,000 a year job, with a family of 4, almost makes enough just to beat the scope of having to go for food assistance. So if the idea is to shift one burden to the other, I don't think that's appropriate. When those people who work, when those city employees who decide to work for our city, those that decide to leave, who are in that 4 to 5 years, because they can get employment somewhere else, one of the challenges we're going to face is when they take their pension with them, because we're unsustainable and we haven't treated them right, which they are our best asset. That's going to create more of a problem.
Something we forgot. If you have questions specifically for Congressman Posey, would you write it on a card and we will give it to David, his assistant, and Congressman Posey will answer you back personally. Okay? Thank you.
All right, this is directed to Phil Archer. Actually, we have 2 questions. The first one is, what vision do you have for our community when you become state attorney?
First one, it's the same vision that I had back in 1999 when I developed the neighborhood initiative. We need to have stronger community partnerships. Unfortunately, in about 2007, because of some of the budget cutbacks that we faced, I had to pull my out of the neighborhood office. I had to go back to Viera and do full-time work there. Our advocates had to be pulled back into other job responsibilities. Some of our Terry, a good one here, she's still doing things in addition to her regular duties. She has kept certain initiatives that we have been kept going since 1999, trying to make them work, and she just didn't want to give up. And that's the kind of spirit that I see that we need to continue here. I want to get us back out in the community. I want to try to reestablish that community partnership so that we can work together to share resources. That was one of the best thing about the neighborhood initiative was adding another tool to all the other resources that are out there in Titusville. It's getting everybody at the table, and as a state attorney's office, we have a lot of power. We have certain tools at our disposal. So it's very important for us to be part of that community partnership, is for us to be out there in the community working. If it's a veterans issue, call George Taylor. It's knowing the players, knowing those relationships, and putting them together.
Okay, the second part, if you can add to what you just said, what are your top goals once you are a state attorney?
Okay. Well, that's one of the top. I actually had 3 goals, and one of the top ones is to reestablish our white-collar crime and consumer fraud division. Central Florida is ground zero for so much fraud, and unfortunately, a lot of the frauds and scams are aimed at our seniors, some of our most vulnerable citizens that we have. I ran that division for 10 years, back from 89 to 1999, before I got into the neighborhood program. I see a real need for that, and so I want to reestablish that consumer fraud division so that we can work with citizens that are ripped off or on any kind of scams and so forth. And we can work with law enforcement, because unfortunately law enforcement sometimes are reluctant to investigate a case and put months of time into it if they don't have somebody in our office that's willing to take that case and prosecute it and go into court. So it's going to be very important for us to work with law enforcement on economic crimes issue. The second, obviously, is the community partnership building, getting us back out in the community like we were before. And third, we're going to continue to go after the worst offenders, the armed offenders in our neighborhoods. I also started a program called Operation Ceasefire. We've been very fortunate. We've had a huge drop in firearm-related crime in Brevard County over the last couple of years. But we got to do better. Any crime is bad, and so we want to keep working and going after the worst of the worst. And we'll work with the Game Over Task Force, which I'm was the legal advisor for. But we'll continue to target those that use firearms.
Thank you. Matt Barringer, what are you going to do differently for my community to make it better? And why would I vote for you?
as a leader in business, as a leader in community service, one of the things that you bring to the table and you have to be able to do is, as a leader, make sure that your priorities are appropriate and bring your A game to the A priority. That's the biggest focus. There's nobody in this room who I would think would disagree with the idea that when we look around our community today, we face not just job loss, unsustainable family structures because we can't find employment within our own home. We're looking at generational issues at this point. When you look at tasks like generational poverty, how are we addressing generational poverty? And we see it in symptoms of we've added our children, we send them home with backpacks now to make it through the weekend with food. We look at our schools and our community closed. It's not a matter of whether we financially had to do that. Maybe that was a measure that we had to come to. But the reality is, at what point do we go, that's not acceptable for our community? And those are the things that I'll do different. I believe in the idea when our top 3 priorities, it's got to be jobs, it's got to be growth, the ability for our commerce to flourish within our city, which is a hybrid plan of financial institutions that are in the city, ready to go, ready to lend, and making sure that we have access to funds in a commercial sector for people who have ideas for business. And the last part is with families. We have to make sure that we provide the opportunities for families not only to live here, to work here, but also to grow here. When we look at our higher education system, we get our students all the way through high school here. We go to BCC, and then Barry University left. What opportunity? We know that education is the pillar to our community for success. We've learned that historically. We've learned Reverend Bracey talked about making sure that we dig wells for future generations. And sometimes when we're digging, they don't know why they're there, but we know why we put them there. That's what I'm going to do for the community. Make sure that we have the opportunity for our families to succeed, work, and prosper here, to bring that promise of prosper back to the community.
Thank you.
May I respond?
Certainly.
Those are very admirable goals, and who in this room wouldn't want the same? But I don't believe that's the job of a sitting city council member. The job of the city council member is to deliver your services. The real job for a city council is to set policy. If you want to go out into the community and make the kinds of things that we all want, that Mr. Behringer spoke on, I think there are any number of organizations and opportunities for you to do that. But a municipal government cannot be everything to all people. We absolutely have to set the policies that allow the developers, the economic dreamers, those who want to build a business, those who want to provide humankind services. We do, as a sitting council, need to do that. But by the city charter, we're very limited in what we can actually accomplish as a unit. An individual council can do nothing. It takes at least 3 votes and on occasion 4 votes. So you've got to build on what is existing for a city council member. So if you want your streets paved, if you want your garbage picked up, if you want the city services, then that's what the city can offer. But as a sitting council member, you have to get out into other organizations to do the kinds of things that Mr. Behringer is wishing to do.
Thank you. I drove here tonight in one. What do you plan to do to give aid to the motorists that drive electric cars in Florida? Do you know what our needs are? Do you wish electric cars to prosper in Florida? This is a general question. You take it.
We know, as we look at our economy and our energy needs here in the U.S., especially in the state of Florida, we see that We need to move away from our dependence on foreign oil. We need to look at new energy opportunities that are out there. And many of our automobile companies, they're looking into new ways, new technologies to power the way that we move, not just here in the state of Florida, but all around the country. We know that the technology is coming out. We know that there are electric cars on the roads. But we also realize that what is limiting this technology from getting out there and from proliferating and people enjoying not having to fill up as much anymore is the reduction in charging stations. There are different avenues out there. There are avenues that can be expanded for charging stations to be available, and I think this is something that can really be looked at. I know there are charging stations at times at businesses, and these businesses use this as a new income for the business. Plus, it gives the business an opportunity to attract individuals who have electric cars, plug-in hybrids, to come and spend money at that business. So that's something that I would definitely be very okay.
One of my passions is to get our country energy independent. And electricity is one of those things. It's just one of those things that we need to move to. We can no longer pay our enemies for oil. This is crazy. 40 years ago, a lot of you aren't old enough to remember this, but 40 years ago, in 1973, we had an Arab oil crisis. Well, guess what? We still have an Arab oil crisis. On 9/11, when they attacked our embassies, they said that it's possible that the oil could go to $400 to $500 a barrel. Do you have any idea what we'd be paying for gasoline if that were the case? Try $15 or $16 per gallon of gasoline. We have underneath us, we have plenty of oil, and we have plenty of especially natural gas. A month ago, I was at a ribbon cutting of a fuel depot in Fort Pierce. Waste Pro, the company that's in the same business as Waste Management, put in a natural gas fueling depot for their whole fleet in the Treasure Coast of refuse trucks. They converted from diesel to natural gas. Compressed natural gas burns so clean that you can drive it 20,000 miles before you change your plugs or you change oil. They're going to save $600,000 a year in fuel costs. But on the same token, it's the equivalent of taking 30,000 cars off the road as far as emissions go. So with a 100-year supply of natural gas, and you can burn it in your car and your truck and your SUV with minor modifications, we need to move away from oil. And that is going to be our bridge fuel for the future, where we're going to be using probably hydrogen. So there you go.
I'd like to comment also about that. Florida, as you know, does not have an energy policy, and this is something that I think we desperately need to help the state and obviously our localities work for options such as the charging stations. You know, as the questioner mentioned, there are very few charging stations from point A to point B and so forth throughout our immediate area. And I think Florida really needs to be the Sunshine State in more ways than one in terms of showcasing alternative energy, clean energy sources. And this is an example of that, where we really could be a wonderful station for experimentation and demonstration of excellence in all the clean energy opportunities that we have. Unlike the two individuals here, do oppose offshore oil drilling in the sense of making sure that we protect our precious beaches and our incredible tourism industry. So I mentioned that as it relates to offshore oil drilling, which, as we know, has been considered very strongly by the Republican Party in particular. But I want to commit to you that I will not support offshore oil drilling here on our precious Florida coast.
How can the citizens of Titusville stop the law of having to pay a water bill when no water is used?
Excellent question. Excellent.
Refer to Mayor Tully on that one.
This is mine, and I'll take it. It's not a happy thing. And no one of us like to do or pay for something we don't think we're getting value for. But here is the concept that is at work. In order to deliver water on demand, there has to be a water system, there has to be a water treatment plant, there have to be wells, there have to be people out there working, there have to be trucks, has to be gas. All of the structure is that when you get to that house and you call the city and say, I want water, you can go over there and turn it on. So what that flat rate cost, and it's high, and we've thought about it, and we've talked about it, and we've tried to do something about it, but the truth of the matter is there are maintenance costs whether you turn that water on or not. Pipes have to be replaced, people have to be employed, equipment has to be bought. So moving forward, I believe that you've got a council committed to cut costs wherever we can. And we've looked at this. And this is not perfect news, but it's a little bit of good news. The city of Titusville has as a requirement a 5-year capital expenditure plan. And when they put that together for the city of Titusville, it is what generates your water bill. So they have to do a 5-year projection every year. They update it. The good news is that in the projection for this year, there was a larger increase than what is actually going to happen. So we are inching our way into making it more affordable, and we are working hard at that. Thank you.
Give a quick one. So that definitively is part of the process. When you have infrastructure, you don't turn it on. Short version is we're paying for something from decisions made in the past so that we can be prepared for today and the future. But one of the ways that I think we can further remove ourselves from that burden is that we're in contracts with the city of Cocoa for the importation of water, whether we need it or we don't. We pay the city of Cocoa for water. We don't have enough. So that's a priority to me. How do we get off that dependence? And God forbid, if we're able to produce water in the same way, the same concept that you would look at making sure that you have enough resources to sustain at least the city. If we have the overabundance of water, can we sell to Orlando? Can we sell north? And so that's it's not a fact of do we have infrastructure in place? We do. So we don't have enough water. And that's how we lower the bill, is getting off the dependency from cocoa.
I have to address that. There's a thing called Area 4 well fields up in Scottsmore. I know it was in the newspaper for a good long period of time. We're drilling wells, we're laying pipe, and Titusville is going to have more water than she can use. So in the future, it's not today, but we're moving rapidly toward that. And I believe we were told very recently that the first water from those wells are now in your homes. So as we get those wells completed, we are going to have more water than we're going to require for a good long period of time. So yes, I've asked about the cocoa water and when can we get off of the cocoa water, but it's a very difficult thing because once you cut it off, you can't ever go revisit it because they're going to sell that water to somewhere else. So we've got to know we've got a good source of water coming in from our Area 4 wells, and that's going to take us a couple of years to get that completed.
Thank you. The next question. In Tallahassee and the House, you got an F in funding for education. How will you change this grade? This is for Tom Goodson.
The most important thing I do as a legislator is by the Constitution of the state of Florida is balance the budget. We have to balance the budget. Now that being said, 52% of over $68 billion went to health education, welfare, children's services, Medicaid, Medicare. That is a big nut to handle. Now that means $30 billion went to all the other stuff that the state does. Now, my opponent says we didn't fund education. He's going to fight to fund education. I beg to disagree, because you have to balance the budget. You're going to be in a minority. You're going to have to work across aisles, and it ain't going to happen. Now, if it's very simple. You do the very best you can up there. In the House, you have 120 individuals. If you've never been there, it's like a dog and donkey show and process. So come up sometime and see me. Now, that being said, you have everybody fighting for every dollar in budget committees. 2 years ago, we cut education $1 billion. Budget conference, we put back $364 million. Last year, we put back about 600-something million. We're almost back to where we were in 2009. Now, education is the most important thing we can do for our children. I believe all that. I buy all that. Okay? Life as an educator. But unless the simple facts, you can have everything you want tonight as long as you make sure you're going to pay more taxes, because the money's not there. And we're trying to do, and working across aisles, you hear everybody say that, it ain't as pretty as you might think. I've been there. Thank you.
When it comes down to the funding, the report card that comes out, there's an organization called Fund Education Now. It's an independent organization where they grade all the legislators in Tallahassee based off of their education policies and how they voted for the current year. There are individuals on both sides of the aisle that received A scores, and there's recipients who received F scores. They don't base these grades just upon how the vote was done just on the budget. They take the totality of the circumstances. Let me give you an example. In the budget this past year, they allocated $55 million for new school construction. 0 of those dollars were allocated for public schools. All $55 million were allocated to building of new charter schools around the state of Florida. Most of those charter schools that are opening up these days are for-profit charter schools. And if we know anything about charter schools, they play on a different set of rules. We've seen a high level of failure within many of these charter schools. We've seen funding go to virtual school programs. For example, K-12, which is the largest virtual school program in the nation, just came out in the news about this organization. They're getting thousands and thousands and thousands of your dollars per student that goes and attends a class there. Found out many of these classes are not being taught by certified teachers. K-12 is now beginning an investigation, and there's other portions within the government that are now investigating why are non-certified teachers teaching these students and using our taxpayer dollars to fund them.
I want to make sure that my opponent is not implying that I'm a charter school supporter. The Jeb Bush Foundation puts out a list of how you vote on charter schools. I'm very proud to be the only Republican that got a D, because I voted against about every charter school bill. Don't like schools for profit. Sounds bad. Never heard of it before in my life. Trigger bill, grading parents. Look it up. The Jeb Bush Charter School Foundation. I am the only seated Republican that got a D. And that wasn't for courage. That was for standing up voting. Now, but I just want to make sure. But if you ever have a charter school bill, call me.
I wanted to comment a little bit. I know this is a state issue, but I think in response to priorities, I think all of us know that education has to be a top priority for the nation and for the state. And we have got to make that an investment priority by the state in order to help our schools and our teachers and our youth. So I just want to suggest that in the balancing of the budget consideration that we put education as
You can
among
help
the
if
top.
you'll send more money from Washington.
Well, if you all will accept it, if you all have to accept it.
But don't send the board with it.
Next question. This is directed to Ms. Martha Long. Was the 2013 City of Titusville water tax increased? And was the 2013 City of Titusville water tax increase approved? If so, why?
Well, as said before, the rates were billed for 5 years. This year, there was a projected 4% increase in the water rate. What was approved was 2%.
Did you address why?
Well, the why is things are more expensive. Part of the why is that we still have employees, we still have to pay their wages, we still have to buy gas, we still have to buy vehicles. So just like everything increases at your house, they've increased for the city of Titusville too. So there is a legitimate reason why it costs more to do business and costs more to deliver you your water. So again, it wasn't as high as projected, and I think that's a win for the city.
How do you plan to reduce the backlog of cases? And do you favor building additional courtrooms at the Moore Justice Center?
It's an interesting question. To reduce the backlog, I mean, like a lot of people have been talking about as partnerships. The judges need to work with the state attorney's office, the public defender's office, and the sheriff's office. Some people have mentioned maybe getting a jail judge and having a dedicated judge at the jails that can handle and get people out of the jail, get them off, reduce the caseloads, work more efficiently with electronics.
Excuse me, they can't hear you.
Can I use the mic? Is that better? Yeah. All right, sorry about that. A couple things on reducing the caseload. It needs to be partnerships with the state attorney's office, public defender's office, and the sheriff's office. That's key. The judges need to work with them, and the clerk of court, And one of the things is people have mentioned is having a jail judge, so they can get people out of the jails when they've already served their time, and not have them keep going back and front or waiting for court dates. Then also on technology, we have great technology. We use it today. We need to use it more efficiently, such as when someone's in jail, instead of transporting them up to Viera, use video conferencing. We do a little bit of it, but we can do a lot more of it. So on that is reduce your caseload. Judges need to work more efficiently, and part of it is attorneys too, because like on a Friday, no one wants to go to court. Judges sit there and say, hey, I'll have a hearing at 3 o'clock in the afternoon on a Friday. And the attorneys say, well, Judge, I'm golfing that day, And that's where we need to kind of force the attorneys. I mean, I work every day. I mean, I bill hourly, so I work from 7 in the morning to 7 at night. And I think that's where the judges have to think of it as a small business, because they need to work efficiently. I think we have some great judges in our county. I really do. Now, expanding, that's all administrative programs. I mean, I don't know if we have more judges to reduce it. Yes, expand it, such as like a jail judge. If we put a jail judge in, that might increase the expense, but it might also reduce the taxpayers' dollars by $1 million. I don't know the numbers, but I mean, because you have a jail judge right there in jail, getting people out of the jail. If someone's in there on a small crime for and serve 30 days because he can't afford to get out of jail, get them out of jail. Don't let them sit there and wait till he has to get to the courts. There's a bunch of things we can do to make it more efficient.
We have time for one more question for the first session. This is directed to Mr. Bill Archer. How has your experience prepared you for the position of state attorney?
I'll be real quick. It's hard to summarize 28 years, but the great thing about having that much time is I've done literally everything in the office. I started off in misdemeanor division, juvenile division. I did child support enforcement. I did the white-collar crime. I did felony trials. But in 1999, when I moved into more of an administrative role, program role, actually going out and becoming a problem solver. And that's been the experience the last 12 or 13 years that has really helped me in my vision of what the state attorney needs to do. I've worked very closely with our current state attorney who's retiring, and he allowed me to see how everything works together, the budget, hiring attorneys, hiring staff, building programs, building partnerships, working with chiefs of police. Believe it or not, there's politics involved with working with other law enforcement officials. So, just seeing all the bigger picture of how everything works together. That's what the 28 years brings me, and that's what I bring to the people in Brevard County. So that's all.
Thank you very much. We will have a brief recess at this time and come back.